For more analysis, we're now joined by Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, a retired Marine Corps intelligence officer, and the president of KIP, which is a strategic risk management firm. Hal, always good to have you back on the show with us. Hal, it seems that Iran is desperate to blackmail the world into another deal. What do you make of this latest threat from Tehran to enrich uranium to any level that it wants?
Michelle, all I can say is that maximum pressure seems to be working. Rouhani's policy of enrichment, going over the threshold for the amount of uranium stockpiles they have, these are acts of what most consider desperation. He doesn't really have too many options left. They've either got to come to the bargaining table and work out a new agreement, or they just do what they tend to do, which is to be very belligerent and see how far they can push things. But their economy is just spiraling downward, and I think they're getting very desperate just to maintain power as the economy's tanking.
Hal, do you think that the other signatories to the JCPOA are all on the same page with how best to respond? Because there are some indications that the United Kingdom may go ahead with those snapback sanctions, while the rest of Europe doesn't quite seem to be favoring that approach. Do you think that there is still cohesion amongst the others on how to proceed here?
I think there's cohesion to a certain extent, but Britain's been pretty clear that they might that they're going to go ahead and impose the snapback provisions, which then puts it over to the UN Security Council and starts the clock ticking on UN sanctions to be reimposed as well. Germany and France appear to be dragging their feet on this. They're probably looking at domestic politics as much as anything else. But there's a lot to lose by going against the United States. And, if they have to compare business and trade relationship with Iran with the United States, there really isn't much of a comparison. So they may end up just going the way that Britain's going when all is said and done.
Hal, when the president tells Iran to be careful with its threats and its actions because they could come back to bite them like nobody has been bitten before, what do you read into that?
Well, I'm kind of looking at what we might do. There's a lot of capabilities that we have been developing in terms of missile technologies, but also cyber attacks and cyber warfare, and that's a different spectrum. And whereas we get a lot of media coverage whenever we're attacked, and that gets out there, less media coverage when we do something, and we've usually held back on doing offensive operations, if you will, but I could see something along that line, which
some kind of cyber strike,
because
some kind of cyber strike, because we understand that was one of the responses that the president did in fact approve in response to the Iranians downing that U.S. military drone. He didn't want to go ahead with any kind of military action because the casualty count would be too high, but reportedly there was a pretty significant cyber attack.
Once you have a presidential finding that they can do that, it opens up a lot of doors. The only thing is they have to weigh it. If they use a particular cyber weapon, then everyone knows what we did, and then they'll come up with counter tactics, and so you have to be careful because it's just one of those things where everybody's one-upping each other. So they're proceeding. We've already done something that was pretty profound, but I think we have a lot of other things that we could do that we're kind of holding back on.
Yeah, certainly a lot in the way the U.S. could respond to all of this. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, thank you so much, and have a happy 4th of July.